friends, Kim from stampingimperfection.com. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm delighted that you're here, and I would be thrilled if while you were here you clicked that subscribe button and that bell to get notifications every time I upload a new video. So I'm sharing this card picture here today because I'm doing the Throwback Thursday spot at STAMPlorations this month, and I picked this card from Maria Fisher. She's a designer, an inspiration designer at STAMPlorations, and I picked this as my inspiration card because I always love cards that are black and white with a little bit of color. Sometimes you don't always feel like coloring in the image, and I love that she created her own background with that stamp, and then she used a stencil over the top of it. But when I read her blog, I realized she actually used a stencil and some clear, glossy embossing paste, let that dry, and then colored over the top of it, adding color where the embossing paste wasn't, it because that's a resist technique. So I decided that would be my inspiration card. I love the black and white with just a little color. I love having a little hint of stencil on there, and I love the fact that her card was sparkly or shiny. So I decided that I would start out with one of my favorite little stamp sets here. This is called Small Birds. It is part of the Bee's Knees collection designed by Shirley Bampton over at STAMPlorations. And I love this little image, and I happen to have an extra one of these that I colored for a project from January that I just tucked in the envelope. So I'm going to stamp this little bird about 4 times, more like 3.5 times, and I'm just going to do it in black, and I'm using this new ink that I'm trying out. It's called Color Hive ink from maker Forte, and this is their, I think it's called Eclipse Black. It's called Eclipse Black, and it's their remarkable ink pad, and it's quite nice ink. You saw that it stamped beautifully the first time there. So I'm just using my ruler to make sure I'm lining these up straight, and I'm cleaning my bird off between every time I stamp it, because I'm touching it and then putting it back down on my paper in a new spot, so I don't want to transfer any ink with my fingers or with the stamp. So and this, I'm pushing my ruler against the side of my MISTI so that I know my ruler is flat against the side of the MISTI, which means that it's straight. So I'm going to finagle here to try to figure out how to actually do this part, and because I want to get one more bird in there. I want to fill the whole thing. So I play around with it to see what's working. For some reason, I'm not thinking through this well. So this is how I entertain myself. I don't think about things sometimes. I'm telling you, when I retired from teaching in December 2019, I feel like all useful information about the practical way to do things leaked out of my brain when I closed the school door behind me. And so I don't know, I lost my ability to reason through things once I stopped teaching physics, I guess. But anyway, I got it done. I got those 4 done. This is a really simple card to make, and it's just, I love this card. This is actually a variation of the spotlight technique, where you can do a whole background of stamps and just color one thing. And I'm putting some foam on the back of this little piece that I had already colored like 2 months ago. I never throw stuff away. The extra stuff goes right in the envelope that the stamp set is stored in. And here he was waiting for me to use him for just the perfect moment. And I colored him in with Copics. I love this bird set. I think it's so artsy feeling, and I love the birds in it. There's a couple tropical birds. There's a couple cute little songbirds. I'm only using I'm only using 3 of the birds today. The other 2 birds I used a lot on my Stamplaurations projects in January when I was doing projects then. So I've put that bird down, and now I'm going to use the Cutplorations Big Hugs word die. And on her card, I could tell that she cut it out. She die cut a black piece and a white piece, and then just offset it. So she just offset it slightly so that the white, you just got a hint of white below the black. And I always like that. I feel like it adds a little bit extra dimension and interest to your card. So I really like that. It's hard to see on the white background, but you can see it up close. Like if you're holding the card, you can see it. So I think the recipient of this card will enjoy that little detail. I feel like it just makes the sentiment stand out a little bit more. So I decided there's lots of ways you could put that on there. I decided I would just glue this in a straight line. Since I'm going with the horizontal row of birds, I thought I would go with the horizontal sentiment also. And I'm just adding, this is art glitter glue, and this glue sticks immediately. Once you push it down, it's stuck. So you want to be careful. It dries clear. I love this little container that I got with I happened to order a refill bottle, and this little thing came with it, and I love this because I can just refill it with the larger bottle, and it works so beautifully. So I'm using some new tools here today. Those tweezers are amazing for picking up tiny things. So you'll see me working with 2 different sets of tweezers today. And those hook tweezers from Maker Forte are really nice for picking up gems and I think it's called the tittle of or tottle, something, the dot of the eye. And I always open up my card base to put that front piece on because I get it straight and I line it up better. That is going to complete that card. How simple is that? You could cover the whole back with those birds and color in just one, and it looks so much fun. So this time I am going to create a black and white background with this seagull, and I see a lot of seagulls no matter whether I'm living in New York or Florida. There's seagulls around me all the time, and I love them. So they just, listening to them and seeing them fly over my house makes it feel like I'm always home. So I really like it. So I'm creating this background. I loved the black and white stamping that she did, and I love that she added just a little color to her card. This card is going to turn out a little bit more colorful, but I'm going to use the stencil to add my color in a unique way. I'm not going to use ink. I'm going to use a new medium that I've been trying out. And I'm always excited to find a medium I have never used before because I love mixed media. So I am careful to clean off my stamps, and I'm also testing out a new stamp cleaner. It's called Squid Buster, and it's also from Maker Forte. So I actually like having that little squirt bottle on my desk. So I did pull out my favorite bubble stamps or bubble stencil there because that's my favorite. I've been using it on every time I use a stencil, I've been pulling that out. And every time I do a mixed media project, out that comes. So I pulled this stencil out. This is the Artsy Swirl stencil. This is a Stamplaurations Artplorations stencil, and it is a slimline stencil. So I'm going to end up cutting down this card panel. Like the card panel on my last card was 4¼ by 5½. My card bases are all 4¼ by 11. I score and fold them at 5½. So that's a typical A2 size card. But I will be trimming this guy down a little bit, and I'll make up for the space it's missing because I only trimmed it horizontally. I didn't trim it vertically. So I'm taping this down with this new mint tape. I'm still undecided about the mint tape. The purple tape is a little too sticky for me. Sometimes it rips my project when I take it off. So I was looking for something new. This is like paper that's sticky on the back. So this is a clear embossing powder that is also part of the Color Hive collection, and I'm using one of my blending tools with a nice foam on it, and I started to do what I always do, swirling it around, but this stencil is very delicate, so I think it would have been preferable if I had used pixie spray to put this down, and then it would have made it easier. So I instead of swirling it around, I put it down and twisted it, and that's how I got the clear ink on there. I did a couple of months ago I have a video or two where I swipe the embossing pad across the stencil and drag it across the card, but again, I thought it was too delicate to do that. So here's the new medium I'm using. This is called Kaleidoscope Powder, and this particular color is Pluto, and it's from Maker Forte. So I'm using a little brush. They actually make a special little brush for it. I don't have that yet. So I'm using the smallest round brush from my blending tool section, and I'm just picking up a tiny bit of powder and putting that powder down in swirling motions, just like I would the ink. Like this is exactly how I would put the ink down. And I covered the whole part of the card that has the ink on it, that embossing ink. And then I'm using this, what I call the sweeper brush, also from Maker Forte. All their tools are so pretty, they match. But then I'm brushing off any excess, and it's got quite a nice sheen, which you can't see very well here. I actually made a video on iridescent raindrops. I think it was the last video I made before this one, and you can see the sheen of this powder. Actually, it's a different color of the powder, but this powder does have a lovely sheen. And here I just trimmed off where the stencil did not cover and decided to leave the entire 5.5 inch length. And I think it's about 3 3/4 or 3.5, somewhere in there. So I'm just pulling out some washi tape because I'm trying a few different things here. I have some nice washi tapes that I thought might work because I have that black and white striped and the black and white polka dot. I really liked that it was very little color on the card. It was mostly black and white. So now I'm pulling out some pattern paper to see what works, but this made me dizzy. Like, you know how you get the pattern and it's just a lot of pattern. Like even looking at it on the screen, it's too much. So I pulled out the washi tape. It's a wider pattern, so this worked better for me. So I'm going to put the washi tape down and trim it down, and it doesn't quite fit. So I needed to come up with another solution. I thought I might pull out, I have some thin gold washi tape because I thought a metallic detail might be fun, but it wasn't in my cup, so I don't know where my gold washi tape went. So I pulled out this 1/8 inch double-sided tape. This is from scrapbook.com. I actually quite like their double-sided adhesives. These are really nice. And a lot of times they give out freebies of that, so always look out for that. That wasn't wide enough, so I put another strip down, and I decided I would use some glitter because I got some new glitter from Maker Forte. So I'm trying out all the things here, you know, little samples of things. These aren't sample sizes, these are regular sizes. This is another tool that Maker Forte has. One end is this nice craft pick. The other end is a jewel picker. And I love the iridescent purpley pink, green, blue color. So I've got that double-sided sticky tape. I removed the backing. I'm just pouring this glitter on. Maker Forte calls it Sugar Sparkle, and this is Holographic Eclipse. So I'm going to use my finger and just burnish this glitter, and this is environmentally friendly glitter. So you don't have to worry about if you accidentally wash it down the drain, which is a good thing. I know I have a lot of followers who definitely, like me, care about that. So I was happy to hear it was eco-friendly. And I love the sparkle. Every card should have some sparkle or some sheen or some shine. And I love the sparkle. I think that added a really fun detail. And that is my card base. Isn't it pretty? Like, it's like a shiny new pair of shoes or something. I don't know. It reminds me of something. I can't quite put my finger on it. I think if it was red, it would remind me of Dorothy's shoes, her magic shoes in Wizard of Oz. So I'm going to put the big hugs in that sort of bare spot that I have. I wish I'd arrange those birds slightly differently, but it works out because I can put this Colorations word die here, the big hugs, right in that spot. And I actually decided that for the dot for the eye, I would use even more sparkle. So I've got one of these Maker Forte Crown Gems, and this is Vegas Strip, this color. It looks blue until you start moving around in the light, and then you see green and yellow. Like, it's really pretty. It's like a purpley green blue color that looks blue overall. So that completes my second card. So even that was pretty quick. And by the way, that iridescent powder, that Kaleidoscope powder from Maker Forte, to set that powder, you can spray it with hairspray, or you can just mist it with water. A light mist will set the powder so that it doesn't come off on your hands. So this is my final card. This is watercolor paper. And for this one, I used my wide flat brush and just put some water just in this top center part. And then I'm dropping in some of my Distress Oxides. The blue is tumbled glass, the yellow is mustard seed, and the pink is worn lipstick. And I'm just dropping the colors in. You saw that I squished the pad onto my Teflon mat, and then I spritzed it with water, and I'm not going to waste the rest of that ink. I had another piece of watercolor paper sitting on my desk, so I am picking that up, and I'll mop it up a little bit and putting it aside, and I am actually going to have a pretty card base that I can pull out some other time for another project. So I'm dabbing up the excess water here because I don't want it to run down the sides, and I do want it to dry at some point, so I'm kind of dabbing it up and leaving a light bit of color. So I am trying to decide what I want to do here, and I pulled out my I'm using a different ink here because the Color Hive Eclipse black ink is not waterproof. It's perfect for coloring with your alcohol markers. You can stamp that stuff and color right away. You don't even have to dry it. But that is a hybrid ink, and usually I can get that to work, but I just want to make a little black splatter. So I pulled out one of my ink sprays, and I put a little bit of black splatter on that, and now I have to wait for that to dry. This is where I'm not patient. The waiting for things to dry is always an essential step that you need to take when you're doing your cards and your splatter and stuff. So while I'm waiting, I'm going to create some iridescent spray. And I'm taking this particular Kaleidoscope powder, is called Neptune, and it is so pretty. Like, this is what I use to make my raindrops, and I put it over the color. So I'm using this little mister bottle, And Maker Forte does have a mister bottle. I just wanted a small amount, so I put a small amount of that powder. I already had water in the mister sitting on my desk, and I'm just going to heat set what's not dry here. So I can do the front and the back because that helps keep it a little bit flat. And I'm going to use my, since this is watercolor paper, I am going to use my Misty on this. And I'll pull out I never use the magnets, or rarely use the magnets. So I pulled out one of the magnets, or attempted to, because they were sticking to everything. They're sticking to my tiny attacher staples. So I'm using this Altenew Obsidian ink. It's a nice crisp pigment ink, so it works well with watercoloring, and it works actually with alcohol markers too. I have a few black inks that I really love. This is one of them. And I haven't used it in a while though, because I've been using my Catherine Pooler black ink for everything. And Altenew has another permanent black ink that I love as well. So it's like hard to decide what black ink to use sometimes. And I'm loving this new ink the Color Hive ink that I got from Maker Forte. I love the foam pad, and it's a firmer foam pad than the Catherine Pooler foam pad. So for this one, I'm going to put that same Artsy Swirl stencil on top now. Everything's dry, and I'm going to tape it down because, you know, I didn't tape a card I made yesterday down, and the stencil moved. So I'm taping it down. I can't find my mint tape, so I'm using the purple tape, and I'm not letting it touch my card stock or my watercolor paper there. Now I'm going to spritz through the stencil. And remember that Distress ink is a dye-based ink, so it is water reactive. Dye-based inks are water reactive. That black pigment ink is not water reactive. So it didn't react with water. And I'm just sort of dabbing up the edges where it's sort of pooling, and I wasn't sure if dabbing it up would take it all off, so I'm going to hit it with my heat tool here, and it's so hard to see. I wish you could see this, but the stencil pattern came out beautifully, and so did the iridescence on this, and I'll pick this up in just a minute so that you can see what I mean. And I've got one more set of Big Hugs word dies cut out there in the black and white, and I've already glued them together, so I will add that to this card. And I am going to trim this down because, again, this is a slimline stencil, and my panel I cut at 4 1/4, so I just need to trim about 1/4 or 1/2 inch off. So I'll trim a little off from each side because I did a pretty good job centering that bird, and I can see where that stencil ended. So, and you don't have to trim it off. I don't think anybody would look at it and think, oh, looks terrible, because it's a subtle touch, and I'm not sure they would notice. So I'm just checking the measurements on my card and trying to decide. This one I do decide to trim down a little bit vertically so that I sort of have the same dimensions. And I'm going to add a piece of black cardstock to the back of this. And I don't do a good job cutting it here. I don't know why. I think I was distracted. You know how your husband walks in the room all the time when you craft? Like, that's what mine does. And talks to me, and then I am, trying to answer him. Luckily, I had the second piece here. And sorry that my phone keeps dinging. No one has anything important to say until you're recording a video. That's all I have to say. So I'm using double-sided sticky tape here because the watercolor paper, since I heat set it with my heat tool, is a little bit warped, and this will flatten it out. I could run it through my Big Shot to flatten it out. That also works. Or my laminator. Actually, sometimes I will use my laminator because that will dry it completely and flatten it out. So I just run it through the laminator with the carrier sheet and without laminating material. I don't want to laminate it, I just want to flatten it, and that works really well. I learned that from Vicki Boutin. So I thought that was a really good tip. And she would know because she is the mixed media expert. So I'm just putting this down on my cardstock and I'm going to trim down the excess. I love this trimmer because it has a wire and I can line up exactly where I want to cut. So I have the same border all around there. And now I'm going to just put some liquid glue on the back of this and add it to my card base. And again, I open up my card base and I find it so much easier to get that centered, or I have it centered vertically and horizontally. So I'll just put a nice big clear block on for that to dry. I still need to add my sentiment, and I'll just add the big hugs sentiment there, and then I will hold this up to let you see that, because it turned out, I just love the way it turned out. So this will actually complete my card. And so these 3 cards were completely inspired by Maria Fisher's original card that I showed you at the beginning of the video. I was going for the black and white and adding a little bit of color, either just a little bit of color or adding color with different mediums, which is what I tried to do. And I tried to add some pattern on this one with the different medium, using the Kaleidoscope Powder and Stencil. So I think it's just a really fun way to add some subtle, fun details, and people will wonder how you did that. And I'll add the little dot for the eye. I'm using these hooked tweezers, and I can't believe how easy they are to use for the jewels. Now you saw that I used the other tweezers that actually stay closed when you close them to put the glue on the back. And I'm just going to grab my other 2 cards so that you can see them. So I didn't have to color in my images at all, except for the one at the beginning, which I already had pre-colored and pre-cut actually. So I literally only would have colored in one image here. The rest of them I have a lot of color on my card, but I didn't color in the birds. And I think all 3 of these are a fun way to actually add some color to your card without doing a lot of fussy coloring or a lot of time consuming coloring. Like, all of them were quick. So that completes my cards. Thank you so much for watching, friends.